Reviewing our Wise Men Celestial Circuit Journey, Part 6, 9/11 Sudden Destruction. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. Friends, we're going to be covering a lot of information today, a lot of different talking points, bringing and tying them all together toward a certain conclusion, so I ask you to just stay with me. We're going to be looking at Bible prophecy, things the enemy is doing as well, children of darkness, how this is all leading to the sudden destruction. We can see on the celestial clock the day approaching, just like scripture says. But the enemy is also aware of the celestial and prophetic time too. So we are going to be looking at how these two overlap and how it all ties into what we see on the celestial clock. Let's start with a celestial radar check. We've been looking at Jupiter is going to be moving into the midst of Gemini. It's already in Gemini in Castor area. But on August 12th, it's going to be directly in line with Sirius, right in the middle of Gemini. That's reminding us so much about Jesus Christ is a mediator between God and men. A beautiful picture here in Gemini. He is the king. He is the judge of all the earth. He is also the prince. He is also the king. He is coming quickly. And Gemini so beautifully pictures the work of Jesus Christ down through time and prophecy, the work of reconciliation. And this is also completing a circuit. Jupiter has taken just over 12 years to go completely around the heavenly circuit, starting in 2014 with the celestial blood moons, all the signs we have seen in this one single circuit, now coming back to the same starting point, reminding us that the heavens declare the glory of God, declares his work that he's doing in time and prophecy. And so we are not going to be surprised that we also see the children of darkness are aware of this time and these celestial signs too, which means that time is running out. We have only a few more weeks before Jupiter completes this circuit of celestial signs that it started in 2014. August 12th is when Jupiter and Venus are going to be in conjunction, and on that morning you'll be able to see both of them rising as morning stars, but also with Sirius, the bright and morning star as well. So you have a triple conjunction rising on August 12th. A beautiful reminder, while all this is in line in Gemini, the twins, picturing the reconciliation. Triple morning stars. Between now and August 12th, though, you'll be able to go out in the morning right before the sun rises, and you'll be able to see the morning star Venus as it is drawing closer to Jupiter, so you'll be able to see, in a sense, a celestial countdown. And I highly encourage you to go out, look up, and lift up your eyes at the picture that is coming together, but also what is apparently the conclusion of the celestial circuit journey the Lord has brought us on. Luke 21:28, and when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And these are the instructions of Jesus Christ that we followed on this journey. When these things, certain prophetic things relating to Israel, the state of Israel, begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads. Start looking at the celestial clock. There are visual things that Jesus Christ says we will see. Lift up your heads, look up, just like the wise men that are on the very first page of the New Testament. That account is right there. For your redemption draweth nigh. That's why you need to do this. Your redemption, your pickup of a purchased possession, draweth nigh. You are running out of time. So look up at the celestial clock, and you will see a declaration of the handiwork that is telling that exact same story. And so that also tells us, since the subject is going to relate to our redemption draweth nigh, we should not be surprised to see the tapestry of redemption, the story declared that relates to our redemption, our reconciliation with our Creator, declared all these years along a particular one single circuit by Jupiter, the king planet. Now getting ready to come back to the same spot where this beautiful picture of reconciliation started this whole circuit of signs. And of course, we are looking up and lifting up our heads because our redemption draweth nigh, that actual pickup, the physical taking possession of a purchased possession. We've already been purchased, those who put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, but there comes a time of redemption, a physical pickup. And that's the harpazo promise that Jesus said, I'm going to go away, I'm going to my Father's house, I will come again, and I will take you, receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. That is the harpazo promise, the rapture. He is coming to pick up what he has already paid for, what he has already completed the work to reconcile. One day we will physically be with him. So this is why we need to look up, but it also again tells us the context of what we will see, that story. But we will also have the idea that your redemption draweth nigh. You are running out of time. There's a counting down in that picture, in that tapestry that you are looking up and seeing. And all this will happen within a very narrow window when certain prophetic things begin to come to pass. And he had been talking about his kingdom, about the restoration of Israel. He says, when you see these things begin to come to pass, your redemption is not that far off. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree and all the trees, when they now shoot forth, ye see, and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. So likewise ye, when ye see these things come to pass, know ye that the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. It's almost here. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. And again, this goes with the conversation that the disciple in Jesus Christ had been having. It was the expectation of the Jews at that time too, that the Messiah would come and set up his physical kingdom. It's not an allegory. It's not some mystical thing. It would be a physical kingdom. And Jesus Christ was telling them, when you see Israel, the fig tree, which God himself referenced Israel as his fig tree in the Old Testament, but he also uses it in a larger parable of a physical thing that we see. When we see springtime and the trees putting forth, that tells us that the hot time, summer, is not that far off. And so he is telling them a dual picture here. When you see Israel replanted, that's when your redemption draweth nigh. In that window, it's going to happen. Jesus Christ did not set up his kingdom when he came here 2,000 years ago. But one day it is coming, and the generation that sees Israel replanted will also be the same generation that sees his kingdom physically set up. That will be physically visible. And this is what he keeps emphasizing. Notice that in this passage, you are going to physically see things. He's not talking about mystical things or just allegorical things. He's saying you will see physical, geopolitical events happen. And it all takes place when you see certain geopolitical things begin to come to pass. That's when you need to look up at the celestial clock because you are running out of time. There's also going to be a generation clock that's telling you you are running out of time too. But what happens when you see these things? Look up and lift up your heads. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. You can bank on it. And I also want you to do. Notice he includes this instruction with what he just told them. When these things begin to come to pass, I want you to, number one, look up and lift up your heads. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life. You're punch drunk, chasing after things of this life. And so that day when I'm going to start setting up my kingdom, that day come upon you unawares. And this is what we're going to be looking at more today. The prophetic 9/11, the day that is coming where he's going to start making his enemies his footstool to set up his kingdom. But take note of the word, that day come upon you unawares. That word unawares is the exact same meaning in Greek, unexpected, suddenly. Which is the same as in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. It's only used 2 times in all the New Testament, and it's in this passage where Jesus Christ is warning, that day can come upon you suddenly if you are caught up in the cares of this life and you're not even paying attention to what's going on in prophecy or on the celestial clock. And then Paul also warns about this exact same that day that is coming, the day of sudden destruction. It's all going to come as a sudden destruction. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Just like a snare, just like a bear trap suddenly snaps, just like a mouse trap suddenly snaps. That's how quickly that day is coming. That's how quickly that sudden destruction is coming. Just like a snare that snaps. As a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Does not matter if you're in the North Pole, South Pole, you will not be able to escape from the events if you are on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore. That's why you need to watch, because you will not be able to escape from it anywhere here on earth. Watch ye therefore, disciples, and pray always that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Now, he's not talking about salvation. He's talking about a reward. The rapture is a reward. He is going to come and take his wise and faithful servants right before that day comes. And he says, if you want to be counted wise and faithful to escape everything, all of it, not just partial, not just midpoint of it, all of it, you need to live like a servant who's paying attention to the instructions that his master gave him. And that's why he emphasizes, look up and lift up your heads and take heed to yourselves. Do not be caught up in the cares of this life. Do not be punch drunk with everything of this world. When I come, it's going to be very important. If you love this world and are demonstrating that with your life when I come, I will leave you here with what you love. The only way to escape all these things is to get off the face of the whole earth. That's the harpazo promise. I'm coming back to pick you up. I'm going to pull in the driveway, honk the horn, and we're taking you out of here. Only my wise and faithful servants, though. that love me and have an ear to hear me. If you would rather hear and listen and follow the world, then I'll let you stay. Your redemption will come later, probably after you are dead. Again, he's not talking about salvation. He's talking about a reward, because salvation never comes by praying always. It does not come by taking heed to yourself and not being caught up in the cares of this life. No, it's a reward. He's making it very clear the escape from the snare that's going to suddenly snap is about things that are here on earth, not heaven or hell, things that are here on the earth, on the dirt. If you want to get away from that, the things that are going to happen here, you better pay attention, look up at the celestial clock, realize you're running out of time, and start living like it. Watch yourself. Watch yourself and live like it. And all this is a warning about that day that is coming suddenly. So let's look at the prophetic 9:11, a sudden destruction that is coming. Revelation chapter 9, verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit. Verse 11, in chapter 9:11, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Apollo is also the same name as Apollyon. They are the same person. But Revelation 9:11 really sums up that day that is coming. What is going to happen? The bottomless pit is suddenly going to open. The king of the bottomless pit is going to come out, Apollyon. Revelation 11:7, talking about the two witnesses, when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit. Chapter 17, verse 8, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Verse 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast that is coming up out of the bottomless pit. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. The book of Revelation plainly tells us there will be a worldwide conspiracy right at the very end. Even before the bottomless pit opens, before the Antichrist comes, there will be a conspiracy by those who would rather serve the beast, who would rather serve Antichrist, who would rather serve Apollyon instead of Jesus Christ. And they will conspire together. They will have one mind. They will be on the same page to give their power, strength, all that they have, their political power, unto the beast. And they are already on this one mind before the bottomless pit is even opened. And so we need to keep this in mind as we see the day approaching of sudden destruction coming, realizing there are already people working toward this. There is a worldwide conspiracy. The Bible tells us this plainly. The bottomless pit's going to be opened, and there are the children of darkness who are expecting and looking forward to it. They are looking forward to the king who is coming out of the bottomless pit. And this is what the Bible tells us, that the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, his coming will be visible. He will descend from heaven. It describes his revealing, just like his ascension. The angel said this plainly. Just as you have seen him go, so shall he come back. It's going to be a visible event. You saw him go up, you'll see him visibly return to pick you up, to take you to our Father's house. It will be a visible event, but also uses the exact same words to describe the son of perdition who is coming, Apollyon. His revealing, his coming when he ascends out of the bottomless pit. The Antichrist is not some political figure who is here now. The Bible plainly tells you he is coming out of the bottomless pit, and he cannot come here until the pit is open. But these are going to happen almost simultaneously, because that day, the son of perdition's revealing is going to happen the same day of the revealing of Jesus Christ, the Son of Man. Both of these will happen the same day. Jesus Christ is going to pull up into the driveway, so to speak, honk the horn, take his wise and faithful servants out of here, and immediately following is going to be the events of the revealing of the son of perdition, with this sudden destruction that is also coming. 1 Thessalonians 5:1, but of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. There will be some degree of ambiguity. You will not know the exact day or hour, but you will have a very good idea if you are watching and paying attention and taking heed and looking up and looking at the celestial clock, knowing that he is nigh at the door. You'll know that he's in the neighborhood. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh. Again, this is the same word that Jesus Christ was warning about, the snare that's coming on the face of the whole earth. Something's going to happen of such a magnitude that affects everyone no matter where you are on the earth. Then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. It shouldn't rob you like a thief. It shouldn't rob you of the reward, of the escape. But if you are not paying attention, if you're punch drunk on the cares of this life, then yes, that day will overtake you and rob you just like a thief. Because you're not following instructions. Verse 6, therefore let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Let's take heed to ourselves. How are we living? And as we see time counting down and us running out those days and hours, we need to be sober about what is about to happen too. We need to live as we look up and lift up our eyes as though we are running out of time, and that day is coming. Matthew 24:32, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. It's going to be just like the days of Noah, my coming, when I am physically coming. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. My physical coming is going to be just like the days that were right before the flood slammed into the earth. They were going on, life was normal, living as though things were not going to change, that judgment was not coming. But in one single day, the flood slammed into the earth and destroyed them. So shall my coming be. Jesus Christ is saying it's going to be coming very suddenly. People will be living life as normal, not expecting that judgment is looming right over them. And thus he's emphasizing the days before the flood. Jesus Christ is coming before the tribulation starts. Right before it, because it's going to be starting the same day that he comes. He's coming while life is still going on like normal. There's food on the shelves. The economy is still going. People can buy and sell. People are marrying, making long-term family plans, not aware how close judgment is. And that's what Jesus Christ is emphasizing. My coming for you will be on a perfectly normal day. And if you're not paying attention, you will not be ready for it. Some are going to be taken, some are going to be left. Verse 42, watch therefore, because some are going to be taken and some are going to be left. For ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. You will have a very good idea. That's why I just told you to watch. Look up and lift up your heads. Watch, but you will not know down to the day or hour exactly when I'm coming. There is deliberately a degree of ambiguity. But know this, that if the good man in the house had known and would watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. He would not have been overtaken like a thief. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Watch for me, and let your life show that you're watching. And all this is a context of a fig tree being replanted. A lot's going to happen within that generation. Luke 17:26. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. There was sudden destruction that started all on one day. Jesus Christ is saying, my coming is going to be just like that. It's going to be a perfectly normal day. People waking up, going to work, and that same day, I'm coming to pick you up, and judgment's also going to slam into the world that same day. Likewise also as it was in the days of Lot. They did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded, but in the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. He's told you 4 times, my coming, my revealing, when you visibly see me just like the ascension, it's going to be just like this on a normal day. But judgment, the tribulation, is going to start that same day. Remember Lot's wife? She got left behind. The angels grabbed her hand. She was going. But when she made it clear that she did not want to follow instructions, the angels let go of her hand. And Jesus Christ said the same thing's going to be happening to some of my disciples too. The ones that would rather not listen to me, not have an ear to hear, would rather be caught up in the cares of this life, they will be left with what they love. I will redeem them. I will pick them up later. Watch and take heed to yourselves, or you will be overtaken like a thief. That snare will catch you. He's told us 4 times when he's coming, what it's going to be like, that it will be visible. And that's why we need to watch. because a lot is going to be happening within this context of certain geopolitical things happening of Israel being replanted. Luke chapter 12, we don't have time to go through all this, but he's talking about the same thing. Blessed are those servants who are looking for me when I come. There's going to be some degree of ambiguity, whether that's a second watch, a third watch, or fourth watch. Verse 40, but be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not. He's emphasizing repeatedly, watch and be ready. Be ready with your life. Who's wise and faithful servants? The ones who are doing what I say. And notice he then goes into the rewards. The wise servants will be rewarded. The foolish servants will be rewarded too. They will be appointed their portion with the unbelievers. They will be appointed to stay behind with the unbelievers because that's who they love. That's who they're chasing after. They're caught up in the cares of this life. They will be left behind just like Lot's wife. The angels are going to let go of their hand. And some servants will be cut off from the rewards. And the foolish servants will be beaten with many stripes. This is so important. So many Christians need to get this. Rapture is a reward. How we live shows who we love. And who we love will have an ear to hear. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required, and to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. And so he just finishes going over again, repeating his expectations for his servants when he comes, when he is revealed. And a few verses later, though, chapter 13, verse 6, he spake also this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and sought fruit thereon, and found none. Now, again, there is some verses separating this, but it does appear to be following the same context and instruction and heart of everything that he has mentioned before relating to his coming. Then said he unto the dresser of his vineyard, behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Which is the same punishment that he mentioned in the same passage where he's talking about his servants. Why cumbereth it the ground? And he answering said unto him, Lord, let alone this year also, a 4th year, till I shall dig about it and dung it, and if it bear fruit, well. And if not, then after that, in the 5th year, thou shalt cut it down. Which again is the exact same thing that he mentioned just a few verses before that in verse 46 about his servants at his coming. Are you bearing fruit? Are you living like I am coming? If there's no fruit in your life, nothing visible outward, and you're just bringing forth fruit for the world, living after the world, then you're going to be cut off from the rewards. You're going to be appointed with the unbelievers because that's who you're acting like. So the verbiage is the exact same, even though there is some separation between these two. He seems to be implying and giving the same exact message. And this is important. We're covering this because as we see that we're running out of time, there does seem to be an implication that there is going to be 3 years of examination, a 4th grace year period, but an understanding that in a 5th year is when a final determination on his servants is going to be made. 3 years, a 4th year, and then sometime in the 5th year is when the cutting down is going to happen, which relates to his servants who should have known better and who should have been making themselves ready and bringing forth fruits in their lives. So we're going to see this same pattern of 4 years and then in the 5th year come up on the clock with also the peace and safety warnings that also seems to imply in the 5th year the 9/11 event should be expected. Again, Jesus Christ will be revealed. He will pick up his wise and faithful servants. They will escape from the snare that is about to come on the face of the whole earth. And then immediately after that, the Antichrist, the beast, is going to be revealed from the bottomless pit. The 9/11 event. Both of these almost simultaneously. And apparently the sun destruction is also going to be used as a distraction from what just happened with the Son of Man being revealed too. There's a lot that's going to happen all within just a few hours on one single day, the day of 9/11. And so this is important, again, as the same book of Revelation also tells us there's a conspiracy, those expecting and waiting for the bottomless pit to be opened to hand their power and strength over to this beast. There is a conspiracy who is also watching the time and is aware that the door is about to be opened. They are expecting 9/11. And so we are going to see both these prophetic events of what Christians are looking forward to on the celestial clock with the prophetic events and Christ revealing, but then also aware that the children of darkness have a work in play for hundreds of years looking for this exact moment, preparing for this exact moment. And so as we are looking at the celestial clock and Jupiter, the king planet, is about to return to the exact same place where it started in 2014 with the blood moons and then all the incredible celestial signs that started from that point with Jupiter as it slowly went around the circuit in the heavens. It's now coming back to the same spot where it's also going to be in conjunction with Venus, a triple morning star, right at a beautiful picture of reconciliation. And also redemption, reminding us of the harpazo promise that he is going to pick up his purchased possession one day. Some will meet him earlier than others. So as we see this beautiful picture, an apparent conclusion on the celestial clock that reminds us our redemption draweth nigh. And so beautifully pictures that with the morning star and Sirius, which means coming quickly. So many things that are exemplified in the book of Revelation, finally coming to a declaration on the celestial clock. We have to be aware that the enemy is also aware of how the clock is ticking too. But there's also other prophecies that are coming to a conclusion at this time. The pilgrim prophecy, and this is very important as we look at events relating to America, that the pilgrims, part of America, is involved in prophecy. Christ foretold the Jews that a Gentile nation would bring forth fruit for God for a time. This would be the pilgrims, a people covenanted to God to bring forth fruit for him. Jesus saith unto them, Did ye never read in the Scriptures the stone which the builders rejected? The same has become the head of the corner. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore say I unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you, and given to a nation, a Gentile nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. Because our King is looking for fruits. And if those who should be bringing forth fruits don't bring forth fruits in their lives, they will lose so many opportunities that the King wants to give them. Jesus was saying there will be a prophesied Gentile nation that will bring forth fruit, and it will be obvious that it's bringing forth fruit. And obviously that has been exemplified by America, starting with the Pilgrims. And if you read the political situation with the Pilgrims, it was distinctly unique as an independent people covenanted to God. And the whole context of the passage in Matthew 21 where he's talking to Jews, and says in context of a vineyard, so it's very powerful that the pilgrims came to a place right near an area known as Martha's Vineyard, even known at that time as Martha's Vineyard. They landed December 21st, 1620. The Mayflower Compact was signed November 11th, 9/11, 1620. And they stated, having undertaken for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. They were setting up an independent people covenanted to God. This was fulfilling prophecy. This was starting in 1620. And since this is a Gentile nation covenanted to God to bring forth fruits for God, it also reminds us of the seed of Abraham, who are not Jews, but they are Gentiles. They are counted as his seed. It reminds us in the Bible when God brought out Abraham, brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven. Look up and lift up your eyes, and tell the stars if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. Not just Jews, but also Gentiles too. God used the stars to promise Abraham that his children would be more than he could count, and that they would be a stranger in a land for 400 years. And he's talking about his physical seed there, in that case the Hebrews. And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Now, this is interesting because the Bible doesn't explicitly state this parallel, but when it does tell us that the Gentiles will also be counted as the seed of Abraham, we can see a parallel here, particularly when Jesus told us, Look up and lift up your eyes, for your redemption draweth nigh. And it's almost identical to what he was telling Abraham about his seed, which is including the Jews and Gentile believers. And so there also becomes a suspicion that a parallel that applied to the Hebrew seed of Abraham back then at the time of Exodus also may apply at the time of Christ coming at the second Exodus, when the children of faith also leave this world at the harpazo promise to escape the snare that is coming. So 400 years are suspected, highly suspected, to also be counting down toward that as well. But also take notice, this seed, these people that will be a stranger in a land, this is very important. It is not their land, but they live there. And so we see the same parallel with this Gentile nation that was prophesied, who would bring forth fruits for God. Also in the same context of those who had rejected the chief cornerstone. One day there will be those who covenant themselves to God specifically to bring forth fruit for God. And this happened in 1620. And we were so powerfully reminded of this in 2020 when we lifted up our eyes, and we saw the great conjunction when Jupiter and Saturn were really close together. It was very visible, a beautiful celestial event. But that reminded us because on the celestial clock, the next closest conjunction like that grand conjunction was 400 years ago. near the time of the pilgrims. And so there were a lot of things on the celestial clock as we looked up and lifted up our eyes in our time that reminded us so beautifully of the tapestry of redemption, that Jesus Christ came to be a light to the Gentiles also. Which reminds us of so many parallels as we look back on the tapestry of redemption, going back to Abraham, how he looked up and lifted up his eyes to the stars as well. And so there's a lot that has happened over just this one circuit of Jupiter as it has gone from Gemini back to Gemini, that has reminded us so powerfully of God's love. And so, friends, there's a lot that we bring to the table, tying together. We see the same concept, apparently, of the 400 years of a people who are in a land that is not theirs. A clock ticking down, a prophetic people, but also understanding that God's focus is going to return to Israel. There are two nations, there are two people groups prophesied who are going to be very important apparently in the last days, with the pilgrims, a nation who's going to bring forth fruit for God, a people who are also strangers within that land. It is not theirs. We have seen this fulfillment of prophecy with our entire nation here in America, which has once been a Christian nation. It's certainly faded from that, but there are still many strangers within this land that is not theirs, looking forward that day. Which reminds us in 2021, just shortly after the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrim's Landing, there was a memorial of 400 lights at Lincoln Memorial, right at the inauguration of Joseph Biden. And supposedly it honored deaths from COVID, but is very suspicious, just shortly after the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims. And at that event, we pointed out they had the 400 lights lining the reflective pool, but also right at the obelisk, the phallus monument right there, they had two pillars of light. Two pillars of light pointing upwards to the heavens, which told us the enemy, the children of darkness, those who have rejected the chief cornerstone, but they are aware of the celestial and prophetic time. They are aware of the parallels, apparently, of the Gentile nation, the land also wherein those pilgrims live, which is the United States of America. When we look on the celestial clock and just do some comparison in August 2025, where we are approaching, on August 11th, 12th, that's when Jupiter and Venus will be in conjunction, which also very importantly in line with Sirius, the prince, the star that means coming quickly. August 2025, and so I looked at all the times that Jupiter and Venus had a conjunction here in Gemini, the twins, going back to 1610, and it is amazing and beautiful how the Lord just showed so many things. There are certain times, and we just block those out, where Jupiter and Venus were kind of right outside the constellation. If we just look at the times that they are distinctly conjoining right in the middle, there's only 2 times that Jupiter and Venus conjoin in this time period exactly in line with Sirius. Sometimes it's to the right, sometimes it's to the left, but there's only 2 times in the past 400 years that Jupiter and Venus are directly in line with Sirius. In 1610, there was a triple conjunction of Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. In 1634, Venus and Jupiter were directly in line with Sirius. But it also caught my attention as we are considering the Pilgrim Prophecy in 1776, July 1776. Jupiter and Venus also had a close conjunction, almost in line with Sirius, but not quite. And so again, this is an interesting parallel as we've been looking and considering the Pilgrim Prophecy, also looking at the nation wherein those pilgrims live, also understanding Revelation 17 that there are those conspiring of one mind to hand their strength and power over to the beast. We have an understanding that that shadow also includes judgment coming on the land where the pilgrims are, just like in the first Exodus, how judgments came on Egypt. But in 1634 was when that conjunction happened right exactly in line with Sirius. So again, this hasn't happened in almost 400 years. So as we look back on the celestial clock, as we look back on time and we look at the prophetic events that have happened with the pilgrims, important biblical prophecy that has fulfilled already, the celestial clock is ringing out very distinct points near these prophetic events. And so that should clue us in that where we are now also appears to be highly important as well. 1610, again, a triple conjunction, which is very rare, but happening right here in Gemini. What was important about 1610? Well, that was the King James Bible, 1611, which has been profoundly important. And then just a few years later, in 1620, was the Pilgrims. In 1622 was a conjunction of Jupiter and Venus just off to the right of Pollux, so it is right in the neighborhood, almost right in the stars there. But you'll also remember the close conjunction that happened almost 400 years ago was in 1623, and that was in Cancer, which is right next to Gemini. An ultra close conjunction, and the next closest one was in 2020, December 21st, the same anniversary of 400 years to the pilgrims. So there's a lot that resonates on the celestial clock and prophetic time when we consider prophetic events that were set in motion 400 years ago. What was the celestial clock declaring in those same window of events? It also resonates with where we are right now, approaching August 2025. And so we should also have the same expectation that other profound prophetic events are going to happen here pretty soon too. Especially when we also see what happened in July 1776 also repeats and resonates with where we are now too. The Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. Right when Jupiter and Venus were in conjunction in Gemini, the twins. The king was in the twins. The Declaration of Independence, 1776, the section of the Lee Resolution dealing with independence was not adopted until July 2nd. So technically, that's the verbal agreement when the Declaration was declared, but it was in the afternoon of July 4th that the Declaration was adopted by the Congress. So that's why it's dated July 4th, but on August 2nd, John Hancock, the president of the Congress, signed the enlarged copy with a bold signature. The other delegates, following custom, signed beginning at the right with the signatures, and that took them time to get all the signatures. So there's important dates with the Declaration of Independence, July 2nd, July 4th, when it was actually adopted, and August 2nd, when they started signing it. Now, when we look at the celestial clock on those dates, July 2nd was when they had the verbal agreement to independence. Jupiter was in Castor. Venus was also in Castor. They're starting to get close together, getting ready to conjoin in a few days. On July 4th was the Declaration adopted by Congress. It was signed only by the President of Congress and the Secretary, a formal presentation of a declaration. Jupiter and Venus are getting closer and closer. The Sun is also in this area. And also notice on July 2nd, when the verbal agreement independence was made, the Sun was directly in line with Sirius as well. On July 7th, Jupiter and Venus were in conjunction in Castor, not quite in line with Sirius, but very close, and the Sun was in Pollux. On July 27, 1776, that's when Jupiter was directly in line with Sirius. August 2nd, that's when the delegates began signing the large hand version, and Jupiter is still visibly in line with Sirius, although not right on the dot. So this is important. Looking over the days that were involved with July 4th, 1776, a very important day with the divorce of the colonies from England, the Declaration of Independence. There were some celestial events going on. A conjunction of Jupiter and Venus right here in Gemini, the twins. The Sun in line with Sirius, Jupiter in line with Sirius, a lot pointing to the twins. Now, of course, Jupiter is the king planet. So a lot happening with the king in the twins in line with Sirius, the prince, which also means coming quickly. So this becomes suspect, again, as we consider the pilgrim prophecy. The enemy is aware that there is a prophesied nation where there are pilgrims and strangers who have covenanted themselves to bring forth fruit for God. Apparently that nation will also be judged, just like Exodus, in parallel right at the end too, right when the pilgrims escape. So the enemy, just like Pharaoh, has hardened their heart. They have rejected the chief cornerstone. And so they are working to hand over their power to the Antichrist, who is coming quickly, is going to be revealed on the same day as the Son of Man too. So we have to keep all this in mind. They know a nation is prophesied. They can't do anything about that, but they can partially control the narrative. They can take control of the nation wherein those pilgrims are. Now, when we look at the parallels with where we are, 2025, July 6th, Jupiter again was in Castor. The Sun was in line with Sirius. August 3rd, Venus is now in Gemini, and they are getting closer and closer. August 12th, Jupiter and Venus will be directly in conjunction, right in line with Sirius. On August 13th, the next day, Jupiter will be technically exactly in line with Sirius. But all this happening with so much parallel and rhyming with what happened in 1776. Right at the same point, which is having a lineup of Jupiter and Venus, these morning stars, which had happened this closely since 1634. And all those events there around 1623. With the events of the Pilgrims and the King James Bible, so much resonating with where we are now, but is also repeating from 1776. One dealing with the pilgrims, the other was with the land that is not theirs. Both of them coming together here where we are now. So let's look at the prophetic timeline. Let's look at the bigger picture of how all this is coming together, because when we understand where we are, we also understand what's coming next. We look at a timeline going from the creation of the world around 4000 BC to 3000 AD. We understand from Scripture that there is an apparent creation week history pattern and timeline, which mirrors the 7 days of creation: the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, and seventh day, which we commonly know by other names. But the Bible hints that those 7 days were a pattern for all of time. 2 Peter 3:8, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing." Don't be ignorant of this. Pay attention. "That one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering toward usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night." And so this is important because Peter is emphasizing don't be ignorant of something that's very important. One day is as 1,000 years in prophecy. When we consider the prophesied promises of Jesus Christ and all of prophecy, we need to remember that one day is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is as one day. There is a parallel that we need to be aware of. That pattern has been set with the creation week. 6 days for man, the seventh day set aside for God. And he's saying, as we remember the Lord's promise, what promise was that? That was the harpazo promise. "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you, take you unto myself, that where I am, up in my Father's house, there ye may be also." And so Peter's saying, as we consider his promise, we remember the pattern of time. Timeline. Where are we in time? And we also keep that in mind with the day of the Lord. The Lord's promise of his harpazo coming is going to be right before the day of the Lord. There is going to be a degree of ambiguity. It's going to come as a thief in the night, but we'll have a very good idea of where it is. We will be able to see it approaching when we understand this pattern, that one day is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is one day. And so he again is also emphasizing it's going to seem like it's taking forever for Christ to fulfill that prophecy, his promise. But we need to remember what is the pattern. It's also going to be right before the day of the Lord. When is the day of the Lord? It's going to be the last day. It's going to be the last 1,000 years. Now we have a very good idea of where we are, how long history has been. But if you ask 10 different chronologists, you'll get 11 different time frames of exactly where we are. And so people will differ a little bit of where we are, but obviously we're 2,000 years from the time of Christ. There is a general understanding that we are somewhere around 6,000 years after creation. And even just reading the genealogies in the Bible and all that, we have a very good idea that we're right in the neighborhood of the seventh day starting, the final 1,000 years of Earth's history. And this is also why creation is important, and there are 7 literal days that represent 1,000 years. There is only a certain amount of time's history, and then it will end. There was a definite beginning. There's also a definite end. We live in a created world. There is an end. We're even foretold that one day the heavens and the earth will pass away. It's going to happen right at the end of 1,000 years with the millennial reign. And then he's going to make a new heaven and new earth. And the clock is going to start all over again. The 8th day. The day of eternity. And so this is important. We don't know exactly where we are, exactly how old the earth is. We just have a general understanding that we are around 6,000 years, which tells us that the last 1,000 years should be starting any day now. That's as close as we can get. There is a degree of ambiguity even with that. But there is an understanding that in the book of Hebrews, Paul also said, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son. Talking about Jesus Christ. They considered Jesus Christ's crucifixion when he was born, when he came, as happening in the last days. Because when we consider the creation week pattern, Jesus Christ came and died essentially on Thursday. So the week is already starting to wind down in their mindset. And so again, notice this is Peter's perspective and Paul's perspective of this creation week pattern. We are already in the last days, which is leading up to the last day, the day of the Lord, when he will rule for 1,000 years, which we commonly nickname the millennium. There is an understanding that there are going to be events happening right before the beginning of that day. And so again, Peter is emphasizing we consider his promise as though, yes, it's taking forever, it seems, but it's going to happen right before the day of the Lord. That's why we need to understand, where are we? How do we view time? It's going to happen right before the day of the Lord. He's going to come again right before the day of the Lord. And there's going to be a lot that happens within the day of the Lord, but distinctly events right before it, while life is still going on like normal, the days of Noah and Lot. And this is what Jesus also said at his ascension. His disciples asked of him, saying, Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? This is highly important. This was a common subject that they were talking about. You have to understand this when they're talking in Matthew 24 and the other passages too. This was on their mind because Israel was not restored. Jesus did not fulfill the millennium 2,000 years ago. It hasn't happened yet. It definitely did not happen allegorical or how some other people try to present it. It's going to be a physical kingdom. And on the day he ascended, this subject came up. Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? And he said unto them, It is not for you to know the times or the seasons, which the Father hath put in his own power. But ye shall receive power, after that the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem, and all Judea, and in Samaria, and unto the uttermost parts of the earth. That's what you are going to be doing, disciples. That's what I want you to worry about. The kingdom is not going to be restored for quite some time. You don't need to worry about it. You have a job that's going to take you a long time. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and the cloud received him out of their sight. This is very important because the visible ascension happened immediately after this subject came up. That Jesus was not about to start the millennial reign. It was going to be a long time off in the future. And the disciples and the early Christians then did not need to worry about it because their focus was going to spread the gospel onto the uttermost parts of the earth. And that was going to take them a while. Because, again, looking at the creation week pattern that Peter and Paul knew, it was still 2,000 years away to the day of the Lord when the millennium would take place. So don't let anyone tell you the millennium has already happened. No, it's not going to happen until a very set time, and it's according to a pattern that we should not be ignorant of. And as we consider the promises and what he said at the ascension, that's also relating to his coming again, the harpazo promise, because it's going to be in like manner. The subject of the kingdom of Israel is also going to come up again. And so this is important. When was the last time the kingdom was with Israel? That's when the Hebrew children entered the promised land with Joshua. They were planted in the land. It took them a while to blossom and grow and take it all. They were really peaking at the time of David and Solomon. And God himself referred to Israel, the land of Israel, my land, my fig tree. And so he uses that as a picture. And so in the time of Christ, when he's talking, and it's already on their mind, are you going to restore the kingdom of Israel? And this subject came up several times. When he's talking about when you see the fig tree planted, that was already the hope and expectation of the disciples. That was a common reference to the promises that they were expecting. They were expecting the land of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, to be restored because they were not their own nation. They were only a province of Rome. And that's very important. When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree. The subject we've been talking about a lot, disciples. So likewise, when you see these things coming to pass, know ye that the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. The kingdom, the millennial kingdom, will be nigh at hand when you see the fig tree. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. There will be a generation that sees the fig tree planted. They will see the kingdom restored to Israel. And that same generation will also see the millennial kingdom of Jesus Christ starting too, when the Son of David will sit on his throne. And your redemption draweth nigh is also coming into play at that same time within that same generation that sees those prophetic events. That's why he said when you see these things, that's when your redemption, your pickup of a purchased possession is going to take place right before I'm about to set up my kingdom, which is going to happen at the day of the Lord, the last 1,000 years. So you will have a very good idea on the prophetic timeline when major events are going to take place. A very certain window. Now this is also important because the children of darkness, those who have rejected the chief cornerstone, will also have a very good idea of what prophetic events are about to happen too. And they will have a very good idea of when the king that they are expecting, the Antichrist, will be revealed and released from the bottomless pit too. This is why prophecy is important. Understanding that Herod, just like in the wise men, he understood the prophetic events, but he was not wanting to embrace the chief cornerstone. And likewise, in our time, we have the exact same Herods who have rejected the chief cornerstone and would rather serve the Antichrist. But of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, which is the exact same phrase that Jesus Christ told the disciples at the ascension. You don't need to worry about the times and seasons because it's way off in the future. You're going to be busy taking the gospel to the uttermost parts of the earth. It's a long way off the kingdom being restored to Israel, me setting up my millennial kingdom. But Paul said, but of the times and seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. Because, yes, we've already talked about this. The day is as 1,000 years. We understand Christ came and was crucified in these last days. There's still some time on the creation week time frame. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. There will be some degree of ambiguity. But when they shall say peace and safety, the children of darkness are saying this. Why? Because they know the time. Then sudden destruction cometh upon them, the children of darkness who have rejected the chief cornerstone, as travail upon a woman with child. It's going to be like birthing events, and they shall not escape. Right at the threshold of the day of the Lord. And so again, why are the children of darkness saying and working these peace and safety things? Because they are conspiring to give birth to a new world order, because they have rejected the chief cornerstone. They have rejected his kingdom. They have said, we will not have this man to rule over us. They want the Antichrist to set up his kingdom, and they're going to do everything they can to help him set up his kingdom at the threshold of the day of the Lord. Keep this in mind. Both of these things are coming together. And right at that threshold, the children of darkness will be saying peace and safety, because sudden, very sudden destruction like a snare is about to slam into the world. Right on the threshold of the day of the Lord. Somewhere around the year 2000. You should already expect those events to start being put into motion somewhere around the year 2000, which is the best idea we have as where we are on the greater timeline. Now this is important. Do you know why the kingdom of Israel was not already restored when Jesus Christ came? Why was Israel a province of Rome when Christ came? Why wasn't the fig tree already replanted at that time? Well, you look on the timeline, what had happened before that when Israel went into captivity? Around 600 BC, they went into captivity in Babylon for 70 years. After 70 years, they were allowed to go back to the land, but those were only lifting of residential restrictions. It was still Babylonian land. They were just allowed to live back in Jerusalem. They still had 360 years remaining of their judgment. God told them, you're going to be judged for 430 years. Ezekiel 4, 3-6. So 430 years. But they returned to land after 70 years after that time was served. During that time period, the temple was burned, but then also the temple foundations were relaid after those 70 years. But they were still under the control of the Babylonians. They were not an independent people. Now, when they came out of captivity, were they a God-fearing people again? No, they were not. And if you read Nehemiah, he had to slap some of them around a couple times because he was angry at you are doing the exact same thing that got us into captivity in the first place. They did not learn their lesson in captivity in Babylon. So they automatically invoked legal sentencing that God had already told them in Leviticus 26, 18, 21, 24, and 28. He told them 4 times, if I ever have to send you into captivity and you do not learn your lesson, you will be judged 7 times greater because you're not listening. And so after they served 70 years, they came back. They still had 360 years remaining on their sentencing, but they did not learn their lesson. So guess what was automatically invoked? Multiply 360 years times 7. You do the math, that is 2,520 prophetic years of captivity that they were going to have to serve because they did not listen. Over 2,500 years. That's a very, very long time that the judge of all the earth declared that they would be under foreign control and occupation. They would not be allowed to have a son of David or their own king rule them for that entire time period. This is also why the millennial reign hasn't happened, because it cannot happen. The judge himself said so. They cannot have a son of David or any of their own kings rule over them during this entire time. That is their judgment. And so up until the time of Christ, they were still serving this same foreign control and occupation sentencing that was still in play. They had gone from being under control by the Babylonians and the Medes and Persians and the Greeks, and now at the time of Christ with the Romans. This was why it was still a subject with the disciples in Jesus Christ. They were wondering, okay, this is the Messiah. He's coming. Is he coming to set up its kingdom? And he told them, quite frankly, no, you don't need to worry about that, because you're going to be busy taking the gospel to the uttermost parts of the earth. You still got a long ways to go. A long ways to go. Almost 2,000 years still to go of the captivity before the millennium can even start. And so this is important when we understand where we are now, what could not happen until very recently. If you do the math of how much time they had to serve from 536 BC, you convert it to our calendar, that's 2,484 years that they would have to serve, which brings you to 1948. Israel was replanted, the fig tree was replanted exactly on time when Jesus Christ said, when God, the judge of all the earth, declared. And so from the time of the Romans, then they became under control of the Byzantine Empire, then the Arab Caliphates, then the Ottoman Empire, then the British. They did not get independent control of their own land with their own governors until 1948, because God himself said you will not be allowed to do that. That is your punishment. The millennium has not happened yet, but it is about to, because he said the generation that sees the fig tree replanted, they're going to see the kingdom of God as well. And this is in the same context when he said, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. There's a lot that's going to happen within a very narrow window of time, and the more that we understand time and prophecy, and we're not ignorant of certain things, we have an understanding when the day of the Lord is expected to start, somewhere around the year 2000. Right within a generation of people, though, that have seen the fig tree replanted, they are also going to see the day of the Lord start. They are going to see the millennial kingdom start within their lifespan of the same people who have saw the events of 1948. And so as we zoom in on the calendar, we start to see that there's a lot of expectation for prophetic events happening around the year 2000. And so when we back up 400 years, we also see the events of 1604, 1611, that's when the King James Version was worked on. And 1620 was the Pilgrims with the Mayflower Compact. In 1776, related to the Pilgrims and that land, was the Declaration of Independence with the United States of America. A lot of involvement of the Masons, those who have rejected the chief cornerstone. They embraced the darkness of all crazy things. A lot of what we know with modern history of the United States of America, when we look at it in context, there are two prophetic other nations going on. There's the Pilgrims, that people, but then also the people of Israel, that land being replanted, the fig tree being replanted. Two prophetic events in play. We are at an incredible time of prophecy, so much happening, which reaffirms to us the strength of Scripture, but also the promises that are also at play too. We are on the threshold of the day of the Lord. And so as we zoom in even further to these pivotal days, again, the King James Version, 1604, 1611, took them a while to work on it. Then the Mayflower Compact, 1620. But you also start to see the Pilgrims that really started a religious freedom, a desire for religious freedom. So you saw multiple other colonies and works going on at the same time in the days after that. 1636, Rogers Williams with Rhode Island, William Penn with Pennsylvania, William Penn's Charter of Privileges. There's a lot of emphasis on suddenly a liberty for Christians to pursue their faith. And that really got the ball rolling for so much religious freedom, where Christians had so much liberty and freedom to bring forth fruit for God. So there is a lot happening with prophecy being fulfilled right here, 1620, and the days after that, the years after that. But there's also an important time of celestial signs that rang out on the celestial clock too, with June 12, 1610, Mercury-Venus, Jupiter conjunction right in Gemini, the twins. July 16, 1623, the Great Conjunction, right at Crab, right near the Beehive, the clustering of stars, so beautifully pictured there. A gathering right there. June 18th, 1634, Venus-Jupiter, Sirius Conjunction, straight line up. These unique celestial signs happening right at this pivotal prophetic time of this prophesied Gentile nation who will bring forth fruit for God. When we look at Stellarium 1623, a very close conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, again, right next to Gemini, so it's closely in context with that reconciliation. Cancer with the beehive constellation and that whole cluster of stars right in the middle. A beautiful picture of the Father's house, a place of rest, a gathering right there. December 21st, 2020, again, was the next closest conjunction from that one 400 years ago almost, when that one took place at Sagittarius, right near Capricornus. And so there's a lot pivotal when prophecy was starting to be fulfilled, but then as we go forward, we can start to see that the enemy is aware of time too. They are aware of that nation. They want to co-opt certain things, and they are also working toward bringing forth a birthing of a new world order, a kingdom that is not of Jesus Christ, but is of the Antichrist. They want to bring forth a new world order, a world that is not Christian, that is not based on Jesus Christ. They have rejected the chief cornerstone, so they don't want that cornerstone at all. They are rejecting it all. So they are setting events in motion where they will have great power in the world to be able to hand over great power and strength and authority to the Antichrist when he does come out of the bottomless pit. So they're going to set into motion certain things decades and hundreds of years before that event, because it's going to take them some time to acquire that strength and that authority to be able to hand it over, especially on a worldwide scale. So we have to keep that in mind when we look at 1776 with the United States of America and the individuals who were involved who have rejected the chief cornerstone. We can start to see a work and play that is also in the same nation where the strangers and pilgrims are, which also clues us in of the land that is going to be judged, just like Egypt at the Exodus, at the next Exodus. Now, when we consider where we are now, 2025, Israel was replanted in 1948. And this is important because the generation that saw those events will also see the kingdom of God set up. They will see the start of the millennial kingdom. They will see the Son of David come and start his kingdom. It's going to be within living memory. They will be living witnesses who can say, yes, prophecy was fulfilled right on time. The fig tree was replanted right on prophesied time when the sentencing ended. Does not mean that Israel was a perfect nation. They got a lot of problems still, and they're not going to be turning toward the Lord till the end of the tribulation when they finally call on the Lord. So they still have some work to do, but their sentencing has ended, so they have been released from sentencing. So the land is theirs. They can have their own government and their own rulers again. That's all prophecy said. That's what God said. When you see these things begin to happen, then look up, lift up your eyes, because the day of the Lord is about to start. Your day of redemption is also nigh at hand too. So we look at the generation, we understand that is a clock. The celestial signs that the Bible tells us about are going to happen within this generation, not hundreds of years previously or hundreds of years in the future. The ones that we need to focus on are what is happening right within this window. That's the important ones, because he said, look up, lift up your eyes. The declarations will be within this window. But we also do notice parallels with other things he prophesied too 400 years ago. So when we considered an average age between 0 and 80, an average lifespan, if we consider that an individual was 10 years old when they saw Israel replanted and they remembered that really strongly, they would be in their upper 80s right now. So they don't have a lot of time left, but they can still remember the very pivotal events. When we understand the greater extent of individuals, someone could have been in their 30s and still be alive today, remembering the events that even led up to Israel's replanting, with the events of World War I, World War II, and just the reshaping of the Middle East there. There's a lot within living memory that is still with us today. So this is important also. The generation that saw Israel replanted, they also remember what their parents told them. Maybe they weren't alive right during World War I and World War II, but their parents were, and they told them all the pivotal events that reshaped the Middle East that led to Israel being replanted. That's within the direct witness of living memory. But it also emphasizes when a certain generation sees certain things, there's a lot that they also know has led up to that, and they've seen a working, particularly in the Middle East, leading toward prophetic events. Now, Christ said, when you see these things begin to come to pass, look up. So what did they see in 1948? They would have seen Jupiter right at the Milky Way throne of God picture right between Scorpius and Sagittarius. They would have also seen a triple grand conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn right in Aries the Lamb, the very lamb that Israel has largely rejected. May 14th, 1948, Jupiter right in the middle of the Milky Way, which is reminiscent from Daniel of the throne with the fiery stream, the throne of God in heaven. So you saw Jupiter the king right at the throne of God, right when Israel was replanted, reminding us who is the one who declared when Israel would be replanted. That was God, is the judge of all the earth. And so when they looked up right when Israel was replanted, they should have been reminded of that fact that the one who sent them into captivity in the first place is also the same one in control of time and the geopolitical situations and captivity. The children of darkness think they are working events toward their own end, but it's for the fulfillment of God's will and the Word of God. Just a few years before that, 1940, a triple grand conjunction, just because that year just uniquely lined up the way Jupiter and Saturn were going, that there was a triple grand conjunction. So reminders of the Lamb of God right shortly before the land of Israel was replanted. Jesus Christ gave some more clarification. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And so this is important. That generation that sees Israel replanted is going to see and hear certain things. He emphasizes, ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. And did this happen? Yes, the two largest wars in recorded history, World War I and World War II, happened in 1914, 1918, and 1939 to 1945. All this within the lifespan of people who are still alive today. Wars and rumors of wars. The Cold War happened right after that. And that was the rumors of wars. There's the threat of war and a lot of hostility right after the outright action, the hot war, World War I and World War II. It became a Cold War where it's a lot of threats and potential, but it never got hot. So you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Those things will come to pass, but the end is not yet. And that is so very important because he's emphasizing, yes, that generation will see some major wars and rumors of wars, but there is going to be a time gap, a notable time gap because the end is not yet. Because, yes, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be some geopolitical changes, but the end is not yet. There's going to be a time gap. And the understanding is that it's going to be a good size gap within that last generation. The end is not yet. It's still some time off. Within that time frame, though, you're still going to see famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. And did those happen? Yes. The Great California Earthquake in 1906, the Spanish Flu in 1918, 1920, the Holodomor Famine, 1930s, Great Chinese Famine in 1950s and 62, the Great Chilean Earthquake in 1960. Some major record-breaking events happening right here in a close cluster toward what we would consider the beginning. And you could even say there's about a 40-year duration for what you'd call the beginning, when the wars and rumors of war started. And around that same window is when all these other record events happened that really stood out. Famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. Right near the wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. It's still some time off, but it is going to happen within this generation. So that automatically tells you, if you look at history, there's about 40 years. You take about 40, 50 years for approximately. The end of this generation, toward the end, is when the rest of the events are going to happen, when the kingdom of God is going to start, when the day of the Lord is going to start. It's going to be somewhere toward the end of this generation. In fact, that he pre-warns us that this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled, gives you a clue that the people who saw the beginning of these events are going to be getting pretty old toward the end, when the final events start. All these are the beginning of sorrows. So there's going to be a time of beginning, but then there's going to be a cooling off. After the wars and rumors of war, there is going to be a cooling off, but understanding what comes next. It's all leading up to the day of the Lord and the sudden destruction that Jesus Christ himself said is coming, a snare that's coming on the earth. So that also clues you in that there's going to be a warming up period again. There's going to be a Cold War. There's going to be a time of cooling off. There's going to be a time of relative peace and economic prosperity. Worldwide trade will be able to happen again. So there will be a days of no period, but there will also be a heating up, because you'll start hear warnings of that day approaching, where they're starting to talk about peace and safety, because the peace and safety that the world has relatively enjoyed for the past 60 years, it's suddenly in danger of being lost. World War III is on the horizon potentially. They're going to be talking about that, which will definitely take away all peace and safety. So you're going to hear the calls of peace and safety. You're going to see even the heating up of geopolitical things, of nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. You're going to see a warming up where things are about to go hot. That will lead to the sun destruction. So if you have about 40 years for the beginning, then 50 to 60 years of a Cold War before it heats up, take note about when that transition is taking place. Take note when modern history tells us a transition took place from a Cold War toward things starting to go hot. When did that take place? Well, the Cold War is generally recognized as ending in either 1991 or 2001. So right around the year 2001. What happened in 2001 that suddenly changed the entire world of things heating up again? That was the events of September 11, 2001, with the attacks on the World Trade Centers. This event was far more pivotal on world events than most people realize. Why did this change the schematic of the world? This event on the Twin Towers. The September 11th attacks. The NATO Council declared that the terrorist attacks on the United States were an attack on all NATO nations that satisfied Article 5 of the NATO Charter. This marked the first invocation of Article 5, which had been written during the Cold War with an attack by the Soviet Union in mind. Australian Prime Minister John Howard, who was in Washington, D.C. during the attacks, invoked Article 4 of the ANZUS Treaty. The Bush administration announced a war on terror. The September 9/11 attacks is when NATO Article 5 was invoked. This started the war on terror, which was not just an American venture. It was a coalition of multiple nations and multiple kingdoms reshaping the Middle East. And what was the cause? It was the events of 9/11 with the Twin Towers on September 11th. And quickly the war on terror got hot with Afghanistan in October. Then that led into the Iraq War in 2003, the Libyan crisis in 2011, ISIL 14, Libya 15 to 19. So 9/11, September 11, kicked off when the world, particularly the Middle East, with a coalition of other kingdoms and nations, suddenly got involved in the Middle East and began rapidly restructuring the entire area. Things are now starting to get hot, which of course restructuring and regime change there in the Middle East, it ruffles a lot of feathers. And so the impact and the ripples is far greater than just the Middle East, because now impacts are affecting China and Russia and other power players, Iran. And so the war on terror is affecting the entire world, which is also leading toward a conflict because the East, Russia and China and Iran and all of them, are at public odds with the policies of NATO and the U.S. But it's all scripted because things are heating up in a conspiracy scripted manner toward the sun destruction, a greater conflict, World War III. But all of it was set in motion on 9/11 because 9/11 was the start, but it's also the goal. 9/11 is also the goal with the opening of the bottomless pit that's going to coincide with the sudden destruction. And 2,000 years after the time of Christ, right, when so many things are expected to get hot anyway, that's when Jupiter was back in Gemini, and the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus was also at Castor in Gemini on the day of September 11th. The king was at the Twins. And one cycle later, November 2014, that's when the One World Trade Center, which was set in motion from September 11th, 2001. That's when it was open to the public, when Jupiter was also surprisingly back in the middle of Gemini again. Because the entire 9/11 events with the Twin Towers and the One World Trade Center, it's all scripted. It's all done deliberately, and it's all being done to the celestial clock and the prophetic clock. The events of 9/11 were not just coincidental events that just happened with some rogue terrorists. No, they were scripted events because they are leading toward 9/11. They had their cover story, very flimsy cover story, but it was done pegged toward the celestial clock in a country that's also pegged to the celestial clock too. And you remember what happened in 2014, the same year that the One World Trade Center was finished and open to the public. That's when the blood moon started, and that started another circuit, the entire circuit that we've been watching with the celestial signs. All these incredible celestial signs are happening within one circuit after the One World Trade Center was opened to the public and finished, which is highly significant considering the celestial signs that started when Israel was replanted and right before that. And all these celestial signs tell us our redemption is drawing nigh, but also the day of the Lord is drawing nigh. And also the Joel warnings remind us that great and terrible day is approaching. It's almost here, that day of sudden destruction. The celestial signs that we have seen from these geopolitical events with the Twin Towers and 9/11 has distinctly happened, warning us of that day. The celestial signs have told us that, but in context we can see the enemy is aware of the celestial clock time too, that we're running out of time. And they are working their scripted events, set things hot very soon. Again, September 11th, 9/11, set in motion things starting to heat up, set the war on terror, set Article 5 with NATO and the coalition, things heating up, changing the world. And it was the same year as the blood moon started with One World Trade Center also. 2014 is when the whole crisis in Ukraine really started reaching ahead. Also when the East and the West started really hitting loggerheads and realizing this is a proxy war with the NATO coalition again against Russia and China as an ally too. So greater conflict is building right on time too. Right at the same time that the celestial signs are starting within one particular circuit starting in 2014. And the Ukraine crisis grew until 2022 when Russia went into open conflict there in Ukraine, which is the largest conflict since World War II. So again, this is important when Christ said, the end is not yet. And there's been a time gap since World War II, that war and nations going to war and rumors of war. Things are now reaching the same level that they were at the beginning. So things have heated up. It's leading toward the great and terrible day of the Lord. Right within the celestial window, the circuit of Jupiter. A lot seems to be building toward the heavenly declarations, which are also telling us the Joel warnings that day is approaching, a great and terrible day. This time frame has seen celestial signs with the closest conjunction since 1623, pointing and reminding us of a powerful pivotal time in Christian prophetic history with the strangers and pilgrims, reminding us of a time where we are now, when those strangers and pilgrims are expecting an exodus. We are strangers in a land that is not ours. There's also the closest conjunction line up with Sirius in Gemini since 1634, that same time period. There is so much about where we are now that looks back at powerful prophetic events in Christian history, which emphasizes where we are now, that Christ is coming to pick up his purchased possession. Christ has done a work with his children, with the seed of Abraham, the children of faith of Abraham. He has done it just like he said he would. And that reaffirms the faithfulness of his promises that he will come again and take us to where he is. And we see so much being brought to mind with the strength of those promises where we are right now, right within this circuit of Jupiter, starting at Gemini, the twins in 2014, and now coming in back to the same spot here in 2025. Approximately 400 years from multiple important events in Christian history, appearing 400 years exactly since the prophesied Gentile nation that would bring forth fruit for God. And so again, that also brings up to prophetic focus the nation where those pilgrims are, which is the United States of America, the nation which is apparently going to be judged at the next Exodus. And all these celestial signs taking place within one celestial circuit that started with Jupiter, with the blood moons in Gemini, and now coming back to a conjunction with Venus in the midst of Gemini. All these celestial signs, all these reminders, all these geopolitical events happening within one circuit of Jupiter, starting in Gemini with the blood moons, then going around and coming back, completing the circuit here in August 2025. A lot that should have us expecting the end of the declarations, coming back to a beautiful picture of reconciliation, reminding us that our redemption draweth nigh. There's a lot more that we could talk about history, particularly with Israel. I highly recommend you watch our playlist, The 10 Kings Time Script. It goes over a greater dive in history, especially looking at the geopolitical events that led up to Israel and after that. So I highly suggest you also look at that as well. Well, that's all the time we have for today, friends. You can find part B to finish this series, 9/11 Sun Destruction, in the link below. Please like this video and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, Maranatha.